Yeah, the sad thing people don't understand is there's such a radical shift between being in the intellectual mind, where the mind is still going, versus when it's not, you know? It's not the same. They confuse because, you know, they're still in that mental drama of creation, sustaining, dismantling.
Well, you got those, you mean they read some books and then they say, I got it? Now I got it?
Well, it's, you know, again, that same thing of wanting to think that an intellectual understanding about it is the same thing as, you know, living, breathing consciousness of it, you know, that remains in that.
Yeah.
One is an object to be viewed, and they carry it like a belief system. All I have to do is believe I'm that. You know, and that's, you know, convince myself of it, basically. But that's being in denial of being an ego, you know. Ego is that feeling of that I'm something separate, that, you know, even oneness is still in that projection, you know. And you can't, you know, people say, well, I see you sitting there, therefore you're in a body, therefore you are in that consciousness. Well, no. And they don't understand the difference, you know, and you can't understand the difference until it falls away. It's just, it's impossible. Impossible. It's impossible to explain to people what happens, what's the difference in that. But it's a vast difference, and just, you know, yammering on and on and on about it doesn't give any space for it to fall away into the genuine. It keeps us as an object. And the more one's talking and trying to convince themselves of it, the more that they're separated from it. You know, even in oneness, they say, well, I am, you know, I'm that, and everything in the world is me, basically, you know. It's all an extension of me, you know. It's all one and the same. So anyway, that's what happens with that. You know?
Yeah.
That's what happens with that. People don't know the difference.
Maybe some will get help from the constant reminders that you're putting out there.
Well, a reminder, you know, again, they want to poo-poo it, you know, and they don't, it's only when they finally become still and quit chasing that projection that they'll find out. But people are so enamored of talking about it and saying, well, you just, you know, hold to the absolute, or hold to, how can you hold to something that you don't know what it is? You haven't experienced. You can't hold to it. To hold to something, there's got to be an object to hold to. You know, that's all. There's nothing to hold to. There's no one there that remains to hold to it. You know, that's the delusion, you know, that there's going to be somebody that's going to get it. And then I'm going to have this special knowledge. There is no knowledge. It just is. That's all.
Got a letter from Gunther. If you remember him from years ago.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh, we're in Seattle. We're doing yagas. Can you please contribute?
Doing yagas for what?
I don't know.
Yeah.
For the world.
Right. You're just going to sit there, throw things into a fire and burn them up, and this is going to help the world how?
I answered him back, though, and I told him that, you know, we're in a small group. We're not doing yagas, Jyotish, Ayurveda. You know, that just...
If you want to burn something up that's going to help you or help the world, burn up the mind. Burn up the conditionings. Burn up, that's the fires that transform. You know, like the Bible says, you know, you refined in that gold, you refine that gold, you refine, you burn out the impurities. That has to do with a personal inner journey, not something external. Not something external to do these yagas and this and that. Burning the fires of purification. Internal fires of purification. Everybody wants to externalize everything. They're going the wrong direction.
Wonder where that tradition came out of, where they went external.
Well, it's all externalized. You know, everybody's focus, you know, that's in ego. The illusion of being a body, mind, and, you know, that's what one is. You know, that's what all of these traditions that have to do with duality, that's all what they point at. You're a body, you're a mind, it's all the world. Everything is externalized. Okay? So everything is done outwardly. On the path to realization, everything is done inwardly, not outwardly. It's no longer an external projection. It's an internal journey. Okay? An internal journey that cuts layer by layer by layer. The internal thing, you know, first, you know, you have the ones that want to, well, we're going to purify the mind, you know, into going in a better direction. One has to have this mask and that mask and this mask and that mask, and we're going to create something that's going to be in the external, you know. But all of that has to finally end. That has to be the internal that starts cutting and falling away and dismantling. People want to project that it's going to be, you know, good, better, you know. All these external things that are going to be projected, continue projecting out in the world, more out in the world. That's why it's, you know, the opposite path. In realization, there is no other. There is no hole to be filled by relationship. One is not seeking relationship. That's why you have these people that say they want to think that that's realization, and yet they're running around and wanting to join your Facebook and wanting to teach you and teach others, and come in and making these claims, and well, who's there to teach whom then? Why are you running around the net looking for this and that to expound at? Be still. Rest in that. That's why I don't go out. I'm not running around looking for other sites to post on. I'm not out friending people. I'm not looking out to expound on it. If people come and they write on my Facebook, it's going to be addressed. That's it. It's addressed because it's come to here. But I'm not out searching for something, not out looking for other. There is no other. It's not another that's getting addressed. It's the spin that's being addressed. The action that one continues to cut through to bring to that stillness. To cut that action that's always wanting to project out, and people don't understand what's being done. They think you're being harsh. What you're trying to do is cut that mind spin, shake it loose. So it has a moment to cognize something. Come, little one. Come on. Okay, let me move this. I know that's a big scary pillow there. Come on. All right, turn around. There he goes. Okay, happy guy. Okay, have a seat. That's why people have these things about, oh, well, and the thing about mind, like somebody found the quote, about, well, you can never drop the mind. Well, no, the person cannot drop the mind. Okay? If you're giving satsang and you're giving satsang to, to people, you say that, just don't pay attention to the thoughts because they're not going to go the whole way to realization. Okay. So you help those that are remaining in that drama to go into witness state. Okay? From witness state, then you cut it. For those that can go forward to realization. But people want to stop halfway. They hear that and they want to stop halfway. This is what happened, I think, to some teachers that are out there. People ask about it. Well, how come these ones have this relationship and that relationship and it's supposed to be realized and what happened with them and yada, yada, yada. Well, and from direct experience, what can be said here is that one can have an initial falling away and can speak again. You can check this into Tripura Rahasya, an initial experience, and then can go back into the mind spin, back into relationship, and in that is a projection. One goes back into oneness. Okay, maybe they're still having some seeing of self, but it's self. Primary is self, but with the projected attributes, which is oneness. Okay, and that projects into love. It projects into, that's what happens. How do I know? Because I've experienced it. And it's a vast between night and day, the consciousness. Between primary is absolute, full realization where there's no mind, no projection, versus that which is that first projection into world and other. Big difference. Okay? Big difference. And I think that, that's what happened with some of the ones, like, Papa G. Yes, maybe he went to Ramana and things fell away. Then he went back into relationship. And then again, that starts that projection outward. Yes, he can still speak of it because he's tasted it. But the mind again reactivates and starts making these projections. Okay? Then maybe one is in witness state. Okay? And they're caught up in a play, the play of God. They'll say they're caught, in the play of God. But they're involved in the play. Okay? And then they're in that, again, witness, can be back into the witness thing. Where, well, okay, I'm there and the mind is going, but I'm not concerned with it. Okay. But that's drawing back into oneness again. And maybe there's just at that point enough of that dichotomy that one can still speak of, what it is absolute, that stillness. But make no mistake, the mind can still and does still. Where there is no more rising and falling of it. And there's no wish, no desire to go out into that projected oneness. Now, admittedly, this is much more rare,
So it seems.
It's much more rare.
Yeah.
But don't poo-poo it that it doesn't exist. It absolutely does exist. But the minute you go out and want to project into relationship and this and that, then there's an automatic projection outwards. I guarantee it. Yes, and it's blissful, and one can be totally surrendered to that object of the bliss. But within that, there is a motion of mind play. Guaranteed. And then one says, oh, it's the play of God. Because it's in oneness. That's all. But having experienced both states, I would never go back to that. And no desire to go back to that. Because on one hand, while it's very, very blissful, on the other hand, it also has the seeds of suffering within it. And that's the truth of what's been experienced here that remains, that's all. And I don't think that it's, possible to understand that until the mind is genuinely stilled and remains in that without rising and falling, and then experiencing that, experiencing that then to be a relationship, to understand then how that projection happens and what comes up within that. And at one time I challenged that. Was for a couple months within that and saw the radical shift of the mind state between the two. one was so far within, within and still, and then the other one projects out. And then draws back in, and then was projected out, and then drew back in and was projected out. So I know exactly what both states are like. Okay? I've been there. I've experienced it. Okay? One rests within that, which has no other, and the other is that first projection outward into self with object added. Okay? Maybe there's still some cognition of that inner self that's still, but there's also that projection outward at that point. Self with personification and other. Oneness. Okay? And it's totally different mental states. So vastly different. Very, very vastly different. And I think that this is what happens with those that are giving the satsang. They've tasted, okay, maybe they've had the taste of the nirvikalpa samadhi, but they haven't stayed in a sahaj, nirvikalpa sahaj. They've gone back into relationship and are speaking from oneness and recalling that center, they're witnessing that, but it's, not remaining in that stillness. They're in the active mode. The projected outward active mode, which is all bliss and love and, we're all one, So that's the difference, is, there is a vast, all I can say, all that can be said is it's such a vast difference of consciousness. And one may be in that play of God and be cognizant of that still point, but they're caught up in the play as well. And for the other, there is no catching up in that. That still point remains. But that takes, the letting the mind, burn itself out. Like it says, the snake eats its own tail. That's why that illustration is there. People don't understand that. The snake eats its own tail. Done. At an end. Nirvana, blown out. Doesn't mean blown out for a second and then it comes back. No, blown out. Done. That's nirvana. Blown out. Then for that one, looking within, there's just, there's this vast emptiness that's the fullness of the universe. It's not an emptiness that's devoid. Not an emptiness that's devoid, and neither looking and can one find anything that relates to a me. No story rises, no thought rises about it, nothing rises about it. And that's why when that one is a Shaktipat Guru, and once again I've touched on this before, when they give Shaktipat and there is that connection, it draws others within because they are in that still. 0 point balance, stillness. It's not an outward projecting into realms, into fantasy, into all of these other things. It's that stillness that wants to challenge and cut and, you know. This is not to say there's something wrong with bliss, you know, but it's a very strong drug. People want to get attached to bliss, that oneness. It's kind of have your cake and eat it too mode. But there's still, at that point, another thread to cut for it to be that nirvikalpa sahaj. They're wanting the sarvakalpa with object. This bliss with objects added. You know, there comes a point when one has entered that nirvikalpa sahaj where really words are so empty. And this is why, you know, Ramana said the highest teaching is in silence, because when one understands that words are all duality, they just keep the mind churned. And people want to continue to fill up space. They get very uncomfortable in silence. They get very uncomfortable in that stillness. Why? What is it one fears? There's a fear to encounter themselves and what they are and what they're not. The delusional mind spins that have been taking place for centuries. When all that drops, there's nowhere to go, nothing to get. It's just whole, W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E-S, that needs to be filled with some object. And that silence and stillness, rather than being something uncomfortable, is really enjoyed for what it is. So for ones like Ramakrishna, that said, I want to taste the sugar, not be the sugar. He understood that projection, and one can absolutely be in 100% relationship to that, and in that projection of love, that this self is that self, and they become the object of their desire, okay, and dance in it. And that's a play of God. They dance in that. Very blissful. Okay? But it's still a personification. Okay? It's not that impersonal me. They have personalized that me and are dancing within that personification. That's it. People think that when you talk about the impersonal me, that it's somehow, again, devoid and bland and, but it's not. It's not. It's that still is. Primary, pure, without another, without object, without subject, aware of only itself, aware of only that, minus any constructs. So being that it's Valentine's Day tomorrow, for those that are on the Bhakti path and they want to go to that state of Ramana, not Ramana, but, Ramakrishna, well, even Ramana at points, the mountain Arunachala was Shiva, And when that bhakti arose, and bhakti was there, then it was Shiva personified. Okay. That's when those states of bliss arise, when it's that projection of oneness, love within that. Okay. But if you're on the bhakti path, then one becomes the object of their desire, one with it. Loses their image of me and other within that, becomes that, surrenders into that, merges with that 100% until that meism is lost within it. And that's all. There is no separation between them and that partner, between them and that Godhead, that personification, whatever it is. One and the same. That's the fullness of bhakti, not myself and other. One loses themselves within that, loses that individualized me within that. Okay. Loses themselves in the midst of that dance, that play. That's the fullness of bhakti. And then when that bhakti dismantles from personified into impersonal, then it enters that still 0 point. Absolute stillness. Yeah. Into that seed state. The other's the flower of it, and this other's the seed state. That's all. With all the potential of that flower within it. The seed state carries all that potentiality. It's whole and complete as it is. It doesn't need the flowering to be complete. It's whole and complete within that. That's all. Such a mystery.